Welcome to this podcast. We're going to spend a few minutes, maybe about 30 minutes with you, talking about building our future with strong Kansas schools. And we're going to introduce ourselves right now.
I'm Nancy Bowles, and I'm the Director of Advanced Ed Kansas, and I'm serving as the Chair of KLFA right now.
And I'm Dana Richardson, and I'm Chair-elect, so I get to follow Nancy next year as Chair. And in my other life, I also work with schools across the state with the State Department and lots of other great things working with kids. So we're going to start right now with looking what is we want to accomplish during this time. We really, by the end of our session, we want two goals for you. We want you to have a little better understanding of some things that are going on in our state, and we want you to think of some ways that you can support our local schools. So our goals here in this 30 minutes is to introduce ourselves, KLFA, to display the economic impact of graduating kids, to share student performance data, to share some initiatives that every state, every district in Kansas is working on, and then at the very end, to engage all of us to help support our local kids. You have a handout that you can use during this time just to take some notes and to maybe jot down some questions that you have at the end. Well, so what is KLFA? We are an organization, statewide organization of about 30 other organizations, and we come together to share a common purpose. This is our mission, and it is to unite the educational community. So you can read that yourself, and if you want to read more about us, you can look at our website there. How do we work? Well, we meet about 4 times a year, and we have 3 work groups. So whenever someone comes to our meeting, they decide which of these 3 work groups do they want to really roll up their sleeves and work on. Do they want to work on student achievement, on professional learning, or on engaging our community in involvement with school improvement and student achievement efforts? So we have pre-K through 20. We have universities, we have colleges, we have all kinds of state organizations around education. Now we're going to look at public schools and economic success. Nancy?
Hi. In the public schools scenario, we have whether kids graduate or not makes a big impact on our economics in our local area as well as statewide and nationally. John Kennedy quoted him, "Our progress as a nation could be no swifter than our progress in education, and the human mind is our fundamental resource." Bottom line, we buy into that, and we wanted to make a close connection so that not only your community but business leaders as well will have a real sense of what impact your supporting education will have. So, why should I care? I don't have any kids in school. Well, let's think about that. We really think that everyone should have a chance at the American dream. And today's students are tomorrow's workforce and their civic leaders, and that our public schools that graduate students are a great investment. But let's really talk about just how great is that investment. Our challenge then is that we can't afford to let anyone slip right through the cracks. We have our best and brightest often leaving our rural and smaller communities, so we really need to make sure that everyone can contribute. And in the end, after you look at the economic status here, you're going to realize as well, it would be really helpful if we could graduate every student to be college and career ready. And you're going to hear that terminology quite a bit. And bottom line, we're going to have to compete internationally. Just to give you a perspective here, there are more honor kids in China than U.S. has kids. So we're going to be our kids will be competing with the honor kids in China. That said, how can we go about supporting public schools and really make sense of it? In fact, dollars and cents. Again, we're going to get into the economic piece. So we have about 81% average for graduation rate in Kansas. So I would like for you to just take a moment and think about, write it down, how much do you think, how much more will those 81 graduates, let's pretend we have a class of 100, from last year earn over a class of high school dropouts in 1 year? Take a moment. Okay, let's see the answer. $841,000. That's a tremendous amount of money. It's just a little over $10,000 per student. Let's go on to the next. How about money saved from reduced expenditures on crime or the use of Medicaid and uninsured medical costs? Go ahead, take a moment and write those down. Dana gave you the answer a little early there for our reduced expenditures on crime. It's about 150 grand. And for Medicaid, $23,000. So if you add all of those up, we end up with well over $1 million as the amount of money that we're saving people once, saving the economy because those kids are graduating. And give me a sense, how many jobs do you think that that would be created in the community? As you think about it, if people have money to spend, they go somewhere to spend it, and someone has to be there to take their money. So how many more jobs are we going to end up with if 81 people graduate? Write it down. Okay. It's actually almost 19. I think that it speaks tremendously. So now let's think about it from a different perspective. We're going to look at your specific district. I'm going to have a pause here for a little bit, put us on pause, and then you click on this PowerPoint and find your district statistics, and I want you to do similar for them. So, how much will and find how many graduates from your high school from last year earned over the class of high school dropouts in 1 year. Take a moment. You already have a little cheat sheet here. It was just over 10 grand. And you're going to tell us what that amount is. Same scenario here. How about the money saved from reduced expenditures on crime or the use of Medicaid and uninsured medical costs? You fill in the blanks for us. What is it? What kind of an impact does it have locally for your district? And finally, there's your grand total. You're going to have to do the math here. And how about those jobs? Again, we don't know that amount. You're going to have to tell us. Figure it out for your own particular district. So, let's look at it from a different perspective. We've been talking about graduates. How about the failure to graduate? What does that cost us? Let's say we have that average of 81% graduating, so the 19 that didn't. What does that cost Kansas? For that 1 year of lost wages, it's about $195,000. For the crime and reduced expenditures there, it cost us about $34,000 to support the criminal activity. And for uninsured and increased Medicaid costs, about $5,000. So the grand total there, $235,000 for those 19 students that didn't quite make it. And the loss of jobs then would have been about 1.5 each year. So that said, we're going to have you pause and do your data as well. So again, those non-graduates, what did they cost your district? The 1 year in lost wages, the crime, and the uninsured and increased Medicaid costs. And your grand total is? And how about those lost jobs? So once you see what that has as an impact on you locally, you can move to the next slide. So, how about new jobs and what kind of skills they demand? Why do we want to? We talked earlier about having everybody being college and career ready. There's been a prediction that between 2008 and 2018, Kansas might have about 482,000 openings. That would be from new jobs being created and or retirements. I think some of those numbers might be a little less than that, but that was the prediction at the time. So we're going to go with that as an average. That said, to fill those almost 500,000 openings, 62% will actually need some sort of post-secondary credentials. Now that would be an associate degree, a bachelor's degree, or some sort of industry-recognized certification. Right now, we have just over 40% of our Kansas workforce who have those credentials. So what does that mean for us? We have a little bit of about a 20% gap here. Let's think back a minute. Approximately how many dropouts did we have? It was about 19%. So we have a pretty decent correlation between the number of dropouts and the amount of information we have here for our 20%. So if we're going to have these new jobs, you need some skills. 9%, only 9% will not need a high school diploma. Those are the kinds of jobs that will be available to them. Right now, that 19% is the statistic we have of dropouts. So we have a clear 10% gap here, and that's going to create some real issues for those 10%. So now we're going to go back to Dana, and now that we have a sense of the impact of our economics on, vice versa, what students are doing on our economy, we're going to talk about, well, exactly how are they doing and how we determine that. So Dana?
Thank you. Now we're going to get to look at some more data, but this is student achievement data in Kansas. If you look at this is the NAEP, which is a national exam or assessment that all states take. We are in the top 10, so we do very well. That means we're 43rd, and that means that, we're really good, but we still have some kids who are not. So if you look at this graph, you'll see where all students are in 2003, 5, 7, 9, and 11. And then you'll see where kids on low income are. And in our state, the low income's even doing better at the national level on this exam. So this is one piece of data looking nationally. Another one that I'm sure you've heard a lot about are our state assessments. And again, if you'll look at this data, we have been improving since we began this set of assessments in 2001 until 2012, and there's a little tiny dip there. But again, it's up around 80%, isn't it? Nancy talked to you about that 19-20%. You can see that trend here too. So again, they mirror. So I guess we look at what is it our kids need. This graphic was created maybe 5-8 years ago by the State Department, and it said these are the skills that our kids need to be workers in your companies. On the left, they are things like creativity, innovation, critical thinking, communicating, of course, the core knowledge too, leadership, responsibility. On the right are those unifying themes that it's going to take for districts in our state to implement all of these at high levels: relationships, relevance, rigor, results, and a responsive culture. So this will come back in a little bit when we look at something else, but we wanted you to see this because this really does focus on where we are and where we've been maybe for the last 5 years or so. You've probably all been hearing about Common Core. Common Core is a new set of academic standards that governors across the nation have come together and decided these are what's important for our kids to be competitive in the world. When you've heard about them, you've heard they're more rigorous, they go more in depth, there aren't as many of them, but many, many states, I think 46 of the 50 states have adopted these. So this is where we are now. We're working on a new set of standards across our state, across almost every state. Why are we doing this? Well, again, that college and career readiness, that's what we want for our kids. So we're revising our standards, we're revising our teacher effectiveness, and of course we have the blessing of technology now that can support this learning in many ways that we couldn't do in the past. Again, what this will do will propel our instructional practices so that we can more engage students and involve them in active learning. Now, another initiative from the state is a new teacher evaluation, actually educator evaluation protocol that we're working on to implement, and Nancy's going to talk about those.
Okay, so what does educator evaluation have to do with student performance? And we would like to think a fair amount. Teachers can't be solely responsible for how well their students perform because there are a lot of variables that go into student performance, but nonetheless, there's a pretty good correlation between what's going on in the classroom and how well students do on tests. That said, we're going to look at it more holistically. You've heard a lot about the student performance piece, and you know they had the Chicago strike that got a lot of attention. But bottom line, that will be a component, not the component that is used for teacher evaluation. Uh, we're going to look at it from a variety of angles. First, who, but we look at the learner development, the differences between our learners, what kind of environment we have there for them, and of course, what is that we're teaching them. We want people to be innovative and try to get the application level of knowledge there, not just the rote memory. And we also are going to look at what kind of instructional practices or how they are trying to engage the learner in this. And then finally, what sort of professional responsibility do we have as a teacher and the kinds of things that we need to be reflective of and always think about growing our skills. But this doesn't just stop at the teachers. There are, of course, the building leaders, the different sort of administrators that are in each of our buildings. And as you think about this, leadership is second only to the classroom instruction in terms of all the school-related factors that contribute to what students learn. So again, we come at it from 4 different angles. First off, of course, they're the leaders, so how are they going to get their school to work and be positive? The second piece is what sort of vision are they giving to our stakeholders overall? And then how can I go about making sure my staff is in a position to really have an impact then on the learner? And all of those will come together, and that will be part of the evaluation process for our building leaders. Again, we can't stop there. We have the district leaders as well. So they are going to have similar 4 quadrants. The first one, again, is they really are influential in terms of the broader picture, bringing in stakeholders, that's community members as well as businesses. They're also going to get the broader organization to be productive and effective, and they are going to spend some time developing staff as well. Again, how do we align this and make sure it's integrated among different buildings and still meet their needs in terms of individual student growth? So now we're going to talk, all right, so we have our students performing like this. They have this kind of an impact on our economy, and our teachers had this kind of an impact on the students. Now what about this thing called accreditation? We're going to let Dana take that.
Thanks, Nancy. Again, accreditation, how are we going to accredit our schools? You saw these words earlier when you saw the, I always call it the glasses, some people call it the lazy 8, but the 5 R's. So we are going to be looking at district-wide accreditation around relationships, which leadership, those kind of things goes under their rigor. We really want what the kids learn to be rigorous. We know it must be relevant for our children and for our kids to learn it. A responsive culture around both the building, the classroom, and the district. And of course, it all focuses on results. So again, there's the rigor, the relevance, responsive culture, and the results. It takes all of us to create those results. The State Department has created a model here that shows a schoolhouse with those 5 R's in each of the windows around a wonderful school. You can see here, this is what we want for our kids. We want active engagement. So when we look at student performance, we look at teacher evaluation, we look at district accreditation. This is our goal. Kids who actively engage with rigorous content and relevant content. We thought these pictures really showed exactly, if you're a visual learner like I am, what it is our goals are for our students. Nancy?
Okay, so where do you come in this whole picture? Clearly, we're using tax dollars to support our public school system, and we want you to be actively involved. We don't just want to tell you and talk at you, tell you about what's going on in the schools. We want you to consider how can you get involved. So whether you are a community group, whether you are a business, whether you are individual citizen, whatever direction you come from, and sometimes it's multiple, how can you be supportive of the schools and get involved? Some ideas we put in front of you. Number one, make sure you keep informed so that you know exactly what's going on. And then what can you bring to school? You have all sorts. Are you an accountant? Are you a plumber? Are you a nurse? Whatever the case might be, bring those skills to one of the classes where it's relevant. Think about being a site council member. You may want to get involved with Big Brother and Big Sister, and think about supporting children from kind of an emotional extra TLC that they get from you, so that when they go to school, they're better able to learn. There are always materials, tools. We can always use your financial support, but that's not the only thing we need here. Think about in your business or your company. Can some of our students come to you and see what it's like to be on the job? Watch you in action. The other thing is perhaps go ahead and come into our classrooms and volunteer. It's nice for elementary kids to have someone to read to. I'm sure you will get put to work in a variety of ways if you take on that volunteering status. Just work with your schools and make sure that you are coordinating. And in the end, we want to think about this being a partnership. We don't just want you to give. We want to have ways that the school is able to give back to you as you provide resources to them. So take a minute right now. You can put us on pause, but take a minute and think about, if I were to really give some good thought to this, what could I contribute? And write it down on your sheet. If you would, you have an evaluation sheet there. You can actually fill in your name, and when you turn in your evaluation sheet, you could actually give them your name and contact information and tell them what you'd like to do to be part of the school system to help some youngsters out, because we know there's a big tie between what goes on in your community and what goes on in our schools. So we would like to very much thank you. We are very interested in continuing to work with you. If you need us in any way, you can contact us via our KLFA website. Bottom line, we appreciate that you're here and that you're willing to think about this and contribute to our schools.
Thanks a lot.